All right, take two, guys. We a few logistical issues that we think we've got sorted. So send your questions through. If you sent some through in the last couple of minutes, they haven't started coming through yet. So resend and touch base and let me know that you're out there, and we'll get started. Here we go. G'day, Leah. Thanks for saying g'day. I suppose we missed last week, so it's been a fortnight since last talking to you guys. Hope you're all doing well. As a state, we seem to be handling it pretty well in Victoria. As a country, we're clearly handling it really well in Australia. And there's been a fair few questions in the last, every day pretty much, but in the last week in particular about what the competition may look like when we get to return to play. And it seems that it's sort of become a when rather than an if, which is great progress for us. Hubs were a discussion last week, and a potential reality depending on the requirements from the health requirements from state and federal governments. But obviously the information that came down late last week suggests that potentially a fly-in, fly-out model may actually work for professional codes, so the AFL and the NRL, and potentially for other professional sporting organisations as well. So there's a fair bit of information there. There's still a little bit to work through. Clearly, the most important thing is that the health of the community is paramount, and the way that we manage, I suppose, the next stages of this fight, this challenge against COVID, is really the thing that will instruct how the rest of our lives sort of come back together. And for many of us, it's work first, our family, and we've had plenty of family time, but it's getting kids back to school. It's getting ourselves involved in the work environment, if that's at all possible. Obviously, whether the restrictions will be eased depending on positives and community transmission. So all of those things are in the mix, and the things that we do with our recreation time, and for us being able to get back to work here with our players and staff is something that we would like to work towards as well. But it needs to be done with the health of the community in mind. I would like to wish Piper Stock a happy 15th birthday. So I hope you've got a chance to enjoy that with family at home. Apparently you were going to come to the GWS game, so sorry that that's not happening at this point, but I hope you have a great day. No, I'm not going to be making a TikTok account. That was a one-off, one and done for me. I got a largely positive feedback about that, so thank you. I'm sure it didn't please everyone. A lot of miss us. Would like to see the football back. I think we're all in that space. What different ways are you talking to your players to stay in touch, and how often? All right, we addressed this probably about a month ago about sort of where our touch points are with the players and staff, and how much is too much and how much is too little. I think all of the research will tell you that communicating in times of duress and uncertainty, it's important to communicate as regularly as you possibly can. Having said that, you can over communicate. You can sort of catch up for the sake of things if you've got no new information. But once again, even if you don't have any new information, to reinforce the information that you do have, it's suggested that is important. The fact that we're remote, the fact that we don't get to see each other as much, we see each other virtually through the screens and through Zoom meetings, but we generally have a catch up on a Monday, which is more an information transfer session, quite one way, because it's pretty hard to have a conversation with 100 people on Zoom. And then on a Friday, we sort of a little bit more social, and there's a couple of little activities that we do on a Friday. Interview a special guest, highlight events that have happened through the week that we want to reinforce amongst our players and staff. Outside of that, the coaches and players have had a lot of contact in the last couple of weeks, and are starting to sort of head towards seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and smoothing our way back. But that's probably the organised ones, and then there's the incidental conversations and phone calls and connections that take place around that. Of all us having football withdrawal, of course, fools. And even when we get back, I don't know how you guys are going to go. You get to see us on the screens, I dare say, but we're going to miss banners and the rest of it. So we'll see how that works. Thoughts on coming home to NT if it was selected as a hub? I think there's still plenty to go through on what the season actually looks like. Whether a hub model, or to what extent a hub model is needed, whether it's for part of the season, for all of the season, whether it's for all clubs or some clubs. I think there's still a lot to work out, with state government. But the direction we got is that largely that the government seems keen to get the AFL and NRL up and going, and that's a real positive for us. So if it needs to happen in hubs, I think it will. The example that we were given last week was the worst case scenario, the hardest and harshest situations for the players and staff to go through, which would be 20 weeks out of 21 that you'd be in a hub. Now, I don't think anyone in the industry believes that is a likelihood, but I suppose it doesn't hurt to look at the worst case scenario or the hardest way to get the season underway and facilitate it and execute it. It doesn't hurt to see that, because you probably appreciate everything that comes between sort of your best case scenario and that. But I think NT's obviously put their hand up saying that they're going to open up. I presume that would require a 14-day quarantine, which adds a little bit of time to your time in hubs. But once again, the AFL are communicating with state governments to see how they can work that out. But NT, could be an option, if only for a 4 or 5 week block, which I think is what you'd be looking at in hubs wherever they're settled. Another one from NT. A lot of NT people want to see it happen. It's in the press. It's quite public. The likelihood of it, I'm not sure. Relocating the whole competition up there is a big exercise and very expensive. Ashton, happy birthday for tomorrow, mate. What's our injury list like? Boys have been training pretty well, from what we can gather. We've got 8 guys on the skeleton staff that have been working through this period. The doctor and our head physio are two of those members, and have been touching base remotely with players. And if they need to be attended to, for a medical concern or for an injury, then those guys can catch up in a group of 2, clearly. So they seem to be okay. We had a few boys that were in rehab just before we were shut out. and those guys have had 6 weeks now to get back and up and about. So, with our progress and likely to sort of smooth our return to play over the next sort of 5 to 6 weeks potentially, those boys should be cherry ripe and ready to go. Dye my hair blonde like the boys? No, that won't be happening. Sneaky chance of Mark Keane debuting? Yes. Getting the boys back from Ireland is a logistical challenge at the moment, and the regulations of our Australian border control to support our fight against this virus is part of it. So we're working with the government and with the AFL to get our Irish boys back. Love Pendles. I love him too. The other thing is, so the message here from Adam about being helpful for his coaching. A lot of you guys are probably involved in your children's sport, community sport, and like, how good would it be to see that happen? I know my boys are missing that structure, missing that connection with their mates, missing that that outlet to be able to train and to play on a weekend. So it's very different. This reality is very different for us. So whilst there's a lot of focus on AFL or on NRL and on schools, in fact, when I reflect on my junior days, my days as a teenager, like the structure of playing football and baseball, I played a bit at the time, cricket, bit of tennis. The structure of those sports are really important and taught me a lot, especially team sport. So I know that this is not ideal. I'd like my boys to be able to spend more time in that team environment, because I think you learn a lot about yourself, about how to trust and be trusted, how to respect and be respected. So I think there's a lot of life lessons that come through community sport and team sport. So, we will get back to that, and potentially this gives us an opportunity to appreciate it a little bit more, because sometimes getting up on a weekend can be a bit of and being a taxi can be a little bit of can be a little bit difficult to do. But I think that we've all let that go now. We appreciate what it does for our kids and the community aspect of it. So I'm glad that, I think it was Adam, I'm glad that you're motivated and ready to go back when you get the chance. James Dillon, can you have a 3-week pre-season? Where'd that go? Can you have a 3-week pre-season in 10 weeks, in groups of 10? The short answer to that is no. Our pre-season would need to include some whole ground match practice if we're actually to get our players back in a physical state to be able to play. They would need to have some match practice, and that match practice would require 18v18. So that is part of the box, or one of the boxes that needs to be ticked for us to start the season at an appropriate time. And it really, if it started before players had been exposed to, we believe, 3 weeks of match practice as such. If you don't get that much work into the players, you're basically asking for them to break down when they come back into competition mode. So I'd be advocating a minimum of 3 weeks of full training in some shape or form, and a couple of weeks of training in groups of 10 prior to that, which would smooth that up. So that is part of the logistics that needs to work out. Has there been any indication of the rule changes? I think the round one's probably a fair guide. Shorter games. I think we'll see a little bit of a bigger bench potentially. And the break between games, we don't know. It'll largely be driven by time constraints and potentially by broadcast, how many games we play a week and how quick the turnarounds will be. Still getting asked about Rage Against the Machine. Damien, you're one track, mate. Hi from Tallangatta. G'day, Kath. If hubs become a ruling, do we have any players who will have family concerns? Yes, we do. And I think that was the large part of the discussion. I mean, I love Chris Fagan coming out saying, suck it up. We're professional sportsmen. This is what the game needs. And if this is what needs to be done for the betterment of the game, not only this year, but going forward, then we have a responsibility to contribute as best we possibly can. And I agree with that sentiment. And all of our players and staff want to get back and get going, and many of them would do whatever it took to be able to do that, because they love to be in this environment. They love to be around each other, and we love to perform. But there will be, if hubs eventuate, there will be some individuals that are in circumstances that require more support than others. If you're a 28-year-old footballer with a young family, and your partner potentially has to go back to work, it's a situation that they wouldn't have been or faced before. It's not an abnormal situation in normal society, but either childcare or extra support in some shape or form may be important. If you're in a hub and you're locked away and you're in quarantine and your significant other, your partner's, having a baby, that's gonna throw some doubt into what that looks like. So we haven't lived through a situation or a scenario like this before, but it does throw up some challenges that would be insurmountable for some individuals, and we've got to consider that on a case-by-case basis. But as an industry, as a club, and as a leader at Collingwood, I'll be pushing towards us playing this season and doing it for the betterment of the game for both now and going forward. But yeah, some individuals will struggle, and I think we understand that. Will we spray the footballs with sanitizer before we use them? We'll be taking every precaution that we possibly can. When we come back to train and when we come back to play, we have spoken to government, but we will, as an organisation, as a group of people, we will be subjected to the most rigorous testing regime that you could imagine. So we understand that if we are to come back and play, that there's going to be a fair bit of rigour that needs to be around the status of our clubs and our people, especially if we are able to travel interstate for fly-in, fly-outs. We will be doing everything in our power to protect ourselves first and foremost, but then to fall into guidelines with the health and government guidelines. So I think we may be exposed to expectations above and beyond general society to be able to do that. And it's just another one of the things that you need to do. Another one of the steps you have to take if to have this professional existence that we have. How's Joffa going? Not sure. He's probably over in Fiji by now. He was relocating, so he's probably living the good life over there. What's the plan with Geordie when we get back? Wait and see. Obviously, how things settle and how players come back and what the competition looks like is going to be things that we need to stay agile and malleable about. We'll look forward to having to work out these or solve these problems as we get back and as we continue. That and being agile is going to be an important part of it. Being adaptable to the environment, being adaptable to the opposition, and potentially the circumstances around what the competition looks like. Handling that is going to be a challenge that the better performed teams are going to have achieved. Viola or voila. Love you, Bucks. Still have my top with a number on it. It must be dirty by now. Builders Academy Australia, get back to work, Andrew. Steele has a Bubs due, so that'll happen in due course. Can you get Big Free 6 beanies? Yes, you can. Google it. I know they're for sale at the moment. So, that is now about a month and a bit away, where we would normally play on Queen's birthday. Obviously, time won't allow that. It's probably going to be, a couple of weeks shy of our preparation will be a couple of weeks shy of playing that game. But clearly, the MND focus and that game have stood alone, really, as a real strong focus around MND and the fight for motor neuron diseases like MND. We have really strong connections in here through our through individuals, Pendle's grandfather, and some others of our group that have been affected directly in some shape or form. So it's a great concept. Neil Danaher, great man. So grab your beanies. It's starting to get chilly, so good idea for a purchase there, Duncan. Any chance for you to get on Swanee's podcast? No. If I get a request, then I'll consider it. Sausage roll and a can of Coke get me over the line, I reckon. Any other babies due? Not that I know, Robin. Townsville for a hub, you reckon? Go reef fishing. Thanks, Terry. Maybe. Not a big fisherman. What other countries are Collingwood watching at the moment for the next Mason Cox or Marty Clark? Brad, one of the casualties of this circumstance may well be the prohibitive costs and structures required to find players outside of our mainstream. Diversity has been a really important part of the industry. I think the AFL has done really well to try and include as many people from as many walks of life as possible, and I think we'll definitely continue to do that. We've had next generation academies, which will go to alternate pathways for young players that we're looking to get up into the AFL system. I think they will be streamlined in some shape or form, simply because of the cost, and that is the economical impact of what we're going through. So, appreciate your international players because it's probably going to be a lot harder for them to get into the top level, and a lot harder for us to find them than it may have been in previous decades, because we spend a little bit more. We spend a bit of money to do that, and maybe the industry may not be able to afford it. We have to look after first things first, but that's yet to be seen. All of those things will work out. What length is my beard? About that long. I'd trim it. Do we have any players that have been isolated in other states? We have. We only have 3 guys that are out of the state. Trey Rusco flies back in this afternoon. And most AFL clubs have got the word out to get their players back into the home states as soon as possible. At this point, Trey can come back. This is the differences in state governments. Trey can fly back in here, and because he's in Australia, he can just resume living in Victoria. If he were to fly from Victoria to WA, he would need to be quarantined for 14 days at this point. So any West Coast Eagles or Freo players that are going back that way, or any Port Adelaide or Adelaide players that are going back into South Australia, have to be quarantined for 14 days at this point. So most clubs are getting their players back as soon as they possibly can. Benny Crocker was around this weekend, flying back today, I believe, so that he can get back to training on the May 18th, if that in fact becomes a date. So the other, outside of that, we've got the two Irish boys, Anton and Mark, who, as I said, we're trying to get back from Ireland, but that's an issue that we're going through with governments to see if we can do exactly that. How the players coping? I think largely they're coping pretty well. I think by now they've got their own routines, they've got their own new habits that they've formed in this new reality. They're training hard. The evidence we've got back is that they're training really hard, and they're ready to make that transition between where they are and where they want to be in 5 to 6 weeks' time. Who have we anointed as the new Joffa? That's Ed. Ed's always been wanted to fulfil that role, been in that role in many ways. So Ed's the new Joffa. Ruffy forward or back, he's a pretty good backman. We like him there. If he needs to go forward, he'll go forward. Viola, thank you. Like the instrument. Dane Swan said he's available if he's needed in the draft. If we're looking for a tubby forward pocket who would kick us 2 or 3, and then go into the midfield and have a pinch hit, I'm sure we could use him. Do you think the boys are keeping a good regime? We can only assume that. With more time on their hands, I think a lot of boys is probably the challenge is probably overtraining more than anything, and getting enough football work in. It's pretty hard to do that in pairs. There's not a lot of cutting and turning. So when you get to that next level where you can sort of train in groups of 8 or 9, there's still no tackling and there's still no contact as such. But you can play evasive games and have that acceleration, deceleration. So that step and those tiers are going to be important for us. But now I think the boys are probably doing a lot of endurance work. We're getting them into that speed and power work over the last couple of weeks. So, but as I said, it'll be really tough for us to know exactly where they're at until we get them all back in together. But the evidence is at the moment that they're looking okay. Are we bringing Stevenson back? Yeah, I would have thought so. Hypothetical, who would win over a 100-metre sprint against the current AFL coaches? There's probably a possibility that no one would finish that race. Because I think one thing about senior coaches, they're all pretty competitive. They'd all be pretty keen to win. And I don't reckon any one of us would have done a 100-metre sprint for a long time. So if you really banged out of the gates and went as hard as you could, I'm pretty sure that not one of the 18 coaches would actually finish the 100 metres. They would all do hammies. I know that I definitely would. And I can say that because if you remember in the 2018 final series when Adz Treloar was coming back from his hammies, and I reckon it was the week off leading into the finals, and he was doing 50-metre sprints, just high-end sprints just to finish off. And I jumped in with him and thought, I'll have a crack at these. I felt like I was in decent nick, so I'll have a crack and I'll really sort of push and see if I can beat him on a couple, because he'd had a big session, so he was just finishing off. And there's actually a footage of it. There's footage of the actual, like, a little sort of 7 or 8 second snippet of the race, of the run, and I did a couple of them, but right, about 30 meters into one of them where I really opened up, I pinged the hammy, and I was able to hide it and disguise it enough. Ads actually looked at me sort of sideways and said, "Did you just do that then?" I said, "Yeah," but no, you can't really see it on the vision, and no one knew that I'd done my hammy outside of ads for about another week and a half, so I was able to hide it. But that's what would happen, I reckon. How's Dunny progressing? Yeah, going really well. He's, this time, whilst it'd be really tough for him, in his situation, he saw 2020 as, this is his chance to really get back in the senior side and to prove himself. And not having a VFL program as such may make that problematic, but he's going to leave no stone unturned, and in many ways it might be a blessing in disguise for Dunny just to get that extra work in. Am I more a sausage roll or a pie guy? I'm more a sausage roll guy, and I think tomato sauce is a must. What's Strawny skin folds? I think they've come back into triple figures, so that's a good sign. When you get up over 1,000, it's no good. Who else have we got? See if you can get Peter Dacos's youngest son to change to play for the Mighty Pies. I'm pretty sure that. Hey, yeah, I know he barracks for Carlton, but he's father-son to us. If he chooses, we'll see how he goes. Come out as a first AFL playing coach. Yeah, there was a few in the VFL era. Those were the days. With the current situation like it is, an extended pre-season, will some of our boys be the fittest they've ever been? Jonathan. Well, there's running fit, and there's cardiovascular fit, and then there's match fit. And they're two different things. I think the athletes that play Australian rules football are some of the most remarkable athletes you'll find anywhere. For instance, the guys in the NFL, their average play time's around 6 seconds. So it's really ballistic. It's all power. It's all, how can you get off the mark quickly? And there's no need for endurance or buffering lactic. We have players that, in a full game, through 2009, in a full game of footy, they run 15 kilometres in a game. They have to accelerate and decelerate, at really acute levels, 50, 60 times a game. They're hitting speeds of over 30k an hour, having to change direction, receiving contact from all four corners at different times. It's a 360 game. Our ground is one of the bigger grounds that you play a transition sport on. So you can be fit running wise, but you need to be, your body needs to be powerful. It needs to be durable. And that's really what pre-seasons are about. And it takes time with certain stimulus to be able to get blokes up and going. So yes, it's an extended pre-season, but without that exposure to cutting and turning and accelerations, decelerations, and making those decisions in the moment, you can't be as football fit as you need to be to enter a season. So that'll be our challenge. But yeah, the boys will be fit. I've got no doubt about that. You'd all blow hammies. Yeah, I agree. A bourbon man or a beer man, probably more gin in the last couple of years. Jim Beam before that, and beers. A couple of beers with mates. There's a beer with a mate is generally where the beers will come. I played under 10s with you at West Gambier. We go way back. Thanks, Mark. Under 10s, I was in Mount Gambier for grade 1 and grade 2. Dad coached West Gambier seniors and brought a couple of boys down from the NT to play in that. Remember played a fair bit of T-ball in Mount Gambier, but I had pretty fond memories. Actually, I'll tell a story. I used to I hope my boys aren't listening. So I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I used to take the some of the change off mum and dad's dressing tables, or I might go rifling through dad's bathroom bag at the bottom of that and find 20-cent pieces or 50-cent pieces. Then head down the shops and get some mixed lollies. And there was some law courts between where I lived in Gwendoline Street and the shops, and I used to walk back, and rather than walking back with all these lollies because I didn't want to get caught, I had a fair little sort of lurk going at the time. Used to walk around the law courts eating my mixed lollies before I walked back to home, and I must have sort of got out of hand because the police actually followed me home one day, knocked on the door, and said that I'd been loitering around the law courts eating lollies for a lot of the last sort of couple of months. And in the end, mum and dad found out that my, the little scam that I had going was starting to get up into, $5-10 a week. And I was eating that many mixed lollies and had a little rort going. I got in a bit of strife for that because I was stealing money from my mum and dad. So, yeah, that's my West Gambier story. Oh, Mount Gambier story. The other one is I was water skiing. First time I'd ever sort of had a crack at water skiing, and the guy said, this is how you're going to get up, and whatever you do, don't let go. And I think I don't know if I was in Grey Lake or Blue Lake. There's 2 lakes up there. Whatever you do, don't let go. But the problem is rather than going like that and getting up on the water, my skis did that, and I was going down into the water, and apparently I didn't want to let go and nearly drowned, but got away with it. A couple of childhood memories. Has Brodie ever invited me over for a return toasty ham and cheese sandwich? No, he hasn't, but he's pretty good at the pizzas at the moment. He's got that pizza maker at home. He's nailing that. Chris, from an essential worker. So I don't know what essential work you're doing, if it's frontline health or teaching or any of that, but for all of the workers out there that are helping us with, especially in that health industry and the teaching industry, you are nailing it for us. Loving the fact that you're getting some kudos. Always been a really important part of our community, and never more so than now. So I'm glad you're getting recognition for it. Thanks for your help, Chris. A couple more questions, guys, and then I'll let it go. Would like to thank you for the moment you gave us in January after training. My 5-year-old daughter was super excited, especially after she ended up on TV and the news. She recognises you every time now. Our interaction with you guys, with our fans, when we get a chance to rub shoulders, it's not like it was sort of 10, 20, 30 years ago. If you talk to your grandparents about how easy it was, you could end up sitting next to one of the stars of the competition and have a beer at the pub, or you'd be working with them 9 to 5 because all of the players had jobs during the day and then would go and train in the evening. So it's a little bit different. We're a little bit removed from community compared to those days. So it's, but at the same time, we're on social, so you can connect and engage and get close to your heroes in a different way. But there's nothing like that intimate personal touch and being in each other's presence. So Timothy, I'm glad that your daughter was happy with that. And the boys appreciate every chance we get just to rub shoulders and to say g'day. And now we're not rubbing shoulders. We're at 1.5 meters social distancing, but in time it'll keep coming through. Apologies for everyone that said that the broadcast is cutting out. So whether you got NBN or someone said to give a shout out to Malcolm Turnbull for making it harder to get good data, but all right, let's see if we can get a couple of good ones. No, I will not be bleaching my hair. If we get crowds back, we want crowds back as soon as we possibly can, but that's going to be a health issue more than anything else. Right, I'm going to finish up by acknowledging the Presney family. Josh Presney was one of the 4 policemen that lost his life whilst doing his job on the front line, as we just mentioned. And they're a Collingwood family. I had a chance to speak to Josh's brother, Alex, last night. A remarkable young man with an amazing outlook given the circumstances. And I just wanted to acknowledge their situation, their reality, and to say that the club is bleeding with you and for you, and we'll support you in any way that we possibly can. Where I was glad last night to hear that some of your positive family memories came around the Collingwood Football Club and your experiences there. And we're just so lucky to be able to provide that sort of emotion, those sort of connections, by just doing the things that we love to do, which is to play footy. So all the best today, Alex, and our thoughts are with the Presney family and with the whole police community. So please spare a moment to consider potentially your reality and sometimes how fortunate we actually are that we're not going through a scenario that we would all hate to be having to deal with. So thoughts and prayers with the Presney family at this point. So guys, hug your loved ones. Have a great day. Find some light in it. Something enjoyable, something that gives you meaning and purpose. We're very lucky and fortunate to be alive and well, and with the choices that we have at our disposal. We won't be in this situation forever, and we will be back together and spending more time doing the things that we love as we go forward. So thanks for tuning in again. May see you next week. We'll see how that pans out. But really love the connection with you guys and through this football club. And thanks for your support again. Cheers, guys.